Welcome to Inside Economics. I'm Mark Zandi, the chief economist of Moody's Analytics, and I'm joined by my two trusty co-hosts, Marissa Di Natale and Chris Derides. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Mark.
Mark.
Hey, Chris.
Marissa.
She said, "Hey, Chris," not "Hey, Mark."
I
You
said,
said
hey,
both.
Mark first.
Oh, really? I missed that.
Uh,
I'm awfully sensitive. I don't know why.
My gosh.
I don't know. Might be the rain. It's been a pretty wet week here in Philadelphia.
Oh man, it's so depressing. I mean, it's
Hmm.
this is Memorial Day weekend coming up, and it feels like March, doesn't it? Or like early April or something. The weather's been pretty bad. And we
Pretty
got
cold.
pretty
Sorry to hear
cold.
that.
Yeah. And we've got two of our colleagues. We've got Adam Kamins and Justin Begley. Hi, guys.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark, and everyone.
Glad to have you on board.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, to have this conversation. So, Justin, what do you do for Memorial Day weekend down there in Tallahassee?
I'm currently at the beach in Pensacola. I was going to say I probably shouldn't show all of you my background because if it's all muggy and rainy in Philadelphia, you might be pretty jealous of my current situation.
Is that right?
It's beautiful. It's about 85 degrees. Water's flat. No wind. It's great.
Any sharks?
Oh gosh, not that I'm aware of. If there's any sharks, I'm running clear. I'm not going in the water.
See
Isn't
where
that
her
like
mind goes? You're talking
hotbed of
happy
shark
talk, and
attacks?
she immediately goes to the negative. What's that all about?
I don't know. I think there is shark attacks in the Gulf. I don't know how
Yeah.
frequent they are, but they happen. I've never experienced it. Hopefully, I never will.
Well, good luck this weekend, Justin.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you.
alligators?
Oh gosh, those are even scarier. No, not for me. I'm not a nature person, I don't spend a lot of time outside. And mostly it's because these things so much exist that wants to kill you. And so, I just try to,
Especially in Pensacola. No, only kidding. Only
yeah,
kidding.
well, oh gosh.
I mean, it just feels like there's stuff down there that can do you in pretty quickly. I don't know.
When I moved from Buffalo to Florida,
Yeah.
there was the thing in Buffalo where it's like if it was a particularly bad summer with bugs and everything, there was always the hope of winter that everything that the weather would change and everything would die. That doesn't happen here in Florida. They
That's
they just
right.
bury and then when it rains, it comes all back
That's
out.
right. I've obviously been to Tallahassee a few times, Florida State, but I've never been to the beaches in the Panhandle. I hear they're beautiful.
They are really beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called the Emerald Coast. White sand, kind of a tealish
Mm.
water. It's very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to make my way there. Adam, have you ever been there
I've
to the
never
Panhandle?
been. I've been, like any Long Islander, which I am. I've been to South Florida to visit grandparents, but I've never been to the Panhandle.
Yeah. I've always wanted. And Marissa, you talking about sharks? Don't they have sharks in the Pacific? I think they got like
Yeah, they do.
massive. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we have
Don't
great
you
whites out here.
do you
I don't
worry
know. I
about
just
that
always
when you're
always
out
hear
there?
about shark attacks in the
Yeah,
Panhandle.
that's true. That's true. Chris doesn't have to worry about it because all he does is he holes up in his wine cellar and
Plays
comes out to play
bocce,
bocce and
trades crypto.
trades crypto.
Very low risk,
Marissa's all in on this narrative. It's great. She's
I'm a little loopy. I think I have a fever.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Well, thanks
Yeah.
for being a trooper here. I appreciate
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Hey, in the spirit of Memorial Day weekend, there's lots of stuff going on, obviously, but we're going to ignore all the noise for a little bit and maybe take the hour to mostly play the statistics game. We haven't played the game in a while, and maybe we'll just take our time here and savor a lengthy discussion around statistics. And I'm going to open it up a little bit. Typically the statistic needs to be something related to something that's going on, in the kind of the economic environment. But let's just open it up. This is a real test to see how good we really are with these statistics. Does that sound like a good game plan? Everyone on board with that?
Yeah. I have a couple. If we have time, maybe we can do more than one
Okay.
statistic.
I'm all for it. Okay, so who wants to go first? Marissa, do you want to go first? Or
Of course.
Sure.
Of course.
Of course. She always goes first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
Okay.
not?
All right.
Okay, my statistic is 12.1%.
Labor market related?
No,
Price
Uh,
related.
no,
Related delinquency rate?
mm-hmm,
Oh, it's delinquency rate. FHA mortgage delinquency rate?
no,
which, by the way, that would probably be pretty close, wouldn't it, Chris?
I
12
don't
point,
think it's
that high. Maybe it's a little lower than that.
a little,
now.
but it's been
It's in the double
climbing
digits,
up.
I think.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it-
been climbing
Is
up.
it student loan related?
It is the
it-
student loan delinquency rate in April.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yep.
based
Right.
on which source?
Yeah, where'd you
Equifax.
get that? Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The 90+ days?
No, this is
No.
total.
Oh,
Oh,
total.
this is
The
total.
90,
Okay.
the 90 plus is 4.6%.
Okay.
These are the highest in that entire series back to 2005. So, the student loan had as we know, ever since the pandemic started, there was a moratorium on student loan payments that was lifted in the fall of 2023. But then there was a 1-year period where even if people did not pay their loans, this wasn't reported to the credit bureaus, right? That ended at the end of last year. And so now these delinquencies are getting reported to the credit bureaus. And so we've seen since the start of the year, the student loan delinquency rate creeping higher, and it spiked at 12.1% in April, which is the highest it's ever been. And a lot of these borrowers, here's another sub statistic.
Hmm.
Guess what the median age of a delinquent student loan borrower is?
Ooh, that's interesting. 38.
You're very close. It's 40, which
40.
which I was surprised at. I thought it would
it's
be
older.
younger.
Yeah.
So these are people presumably, right, that probably have mortgages and car payments and other forms of debt. And yeah, this is an interesting development.
So can I ask, is that the Equifax-based data that
Yes.
we collect?
Yeah.
Okay. And is
Yeah,
that through
from
the
Credit
month
Forecast.
it has to be through the month of April then? That has
That's
to be
right. This is April. Yeah.
And is that, maybe I pressed too hard, but percent of the number of trades outstanding? Or is
Yes.
that, oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 I want to say the dollar, like percent of total dollar balances is like 8.5%, something like
That's the
that.
number I
Yeah.
have in my mind.
That's what I
Okay.
had.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
this
crazy
is
high.
trades.
Which
It's
is
still
the highest of all
crazy
time.
high.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, I was looking at it the other day. Chris and I were going back and forth on email on that. I think there's close to $100 billion worth of student loans. Could that be right? In our data, $100 billion of loans that are delinquent. But that feels a little
Really?
low. Yeah, because our balances, the balances that we measure are a little bit lower than kind of the statistics you get from the Department of Ed. Is that right, Chris? Do I have that right?
We were
No.
talking about $100 billion of interest payment. Is that?
It was both.
Oh, it was both.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
both. Yeah.
$100 billion. That sounds.
Sounds
There's
low.
one. That's
Total
low.
balance is, I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I was going to go there. I think it's 1.7 trillion, right?
Not
Or-
in our data though. Not
In our
the-
data, it's 918 billion.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what the gap is. What we're not measuring. But anyway, the
Not sure.
delinquency rates, I'm sure, very consistent. But
Okay.
yeah, you want to Chris talk about ARC exchange, because we got a question in this case from a client, not a podcast listener, about the economic. What does this mean for the economy? So you've got all these folks. I think it's 5-6 million people that are delinquent. Double-digit delinquency rate. Now these folks are being reported to the credit bureaus. Their scores are getting dinged. And I think in the case of student loans, your wages can be garnished.
Yep.
Right. And I think
Government
that's
student
just
loans, yeah.
starting to happen. And of course, many of these households with student loans tend to be lower middle income, don't have a lot of other financial resources, may not have a lot of savings. So that puts them in a pretty tough spot financially. What do you do? Do you make the student loan payment? And if you do, what else aren't you buying? Or what other are you going delinquent on your credit card and your auto loan? And we're seeing some evidence of that as well. Chris, do you want to describe what we thought the macroeconomic consequence of it is?
Yeah, we did more of I call it back of the envelope calculation to figure out or estimate what the impact would be, right? So take the number of outstanding student loans, which I assumed it was 1.7 trillion, assume a 6% kind of outstanding interest rate on average, right? It certainly has been lower in the past, but it's been higher more recently. So 6, round numbers. So that gives you $100 billion. right? And then from that, we have to, so that's about what, 0.3% of
Yeah,
GDP.
GDP.
So that's
Yep.
that would be quite substantial.
Right.
From that, though, you have to figure, well, there's a portion that of folks who have the financial resources. They knew this day was coming that they would have to repay. So I think we estimate maybe half of borrowers are in a position where they have the resources to pay the student loan. It's not really going to impact their spending to a significant degree. There's probably 15% that actually will default. That's been the historical default rate, right? So they're also not going to. It's not going to really impact their spending. Obviously, that's a lower income category, so it doesn't really impact the overall spending or consumption. But nonetheless, it doesn't really affect their trajectory. And that leaves us with the remaining group, right, which could see some impact. They're going to have to adjust their finances. Some will benefit from income-based repayment plans, so that'll take some of the edge off. But in the end, estimate probably a 0.1, 0.15% GDP percent GDP impact. So, it's not massive, but it is something. It is going to, and once you add it with other factors, it's material.
Yeah, and that would be for calendar year 2025, kind of.
Correct.
So, if the impact is concentrated, let's say in Q2 right now, this quarter, you annualize, 0.15, that gets you to 0.6, right? That you reduce the annualized rate of growth. And I'm sure I'm overstating the case because that would play out over maybe a couple, 3 quarters. But, let's just say for conversational purposes, it all happened in the second quarter, 0.6% annualized deduction from GDP, and already GDP was negative in Q1 and coming in on the light side in Q2, that has a meaningful impact on growth in the current quarter. So, more of an impact. I know, Justin, you look at this data a lot too, because I just spend a lot of time. You put every month a document together going over the Equifax results.
Mhm.
Anything else you noticed with regard to student loans, or anything else you noticed in that broader data, the consumer credit data that you look at?
Yeah, I mean, one note I want to make on student loans is that I think it was from the New York Fed that they estimated something like 5.5 million borrowers with student loans are facing at least a 75 point cut to their credit score. Some of the borrowers are facing double that, so you got to imagine that that's going to dry up some borrowing, at least make borrowing more risky for a larger portion of borrowers. Outside of student loans, I mean, that's largely, I actually, Mercy, you took one of my statistics. So,
Oh, sorry about
that's
that.
okay. That's all right. That's good.
Yeah.
I have another one ready. But so the total dollar delinquency rate on like seasonally adjusted for April was 2.7%. This is pretty close to what it was in, kind of just before 2019. It's been creeping up recently, largely because of student loans, but there's also some other stuff going on. It felt like for at least about 6 months that credit conditions were stabilizing. The delinquency rate was largely unchanged and below the pre-pandemic average for several months. But in the last, really since January, most consumer credit instruments have experienced more stress, including bank cards, which are, I think they're up about 17 basis points or so, the delinquency rate on bank cards. Since January. First mortgages are experiencing more stress. And I think we mentioned FHA. It seems that the Mortgage Bankers Association survey for the first quarter confirmed that a lot of that stress is coming from FHA mortgage delinquencies, which I believe is at a 13-year high right now, kind of save for the pandemic era. So yeah, there's definitely stress appearing kind of across the consumer credit portfolio. A lot of which though is kind of coming from the mortgage side of things.
Hmm. Yeah, so what you're saying is, eh, folks that are now having to pay on their student loans, some are going delinquent, some are going delinquent on other. It feels like, we don't know this for sure. It's hard to connect the dots, but it feels, given the timing, it does feel like it's now starting to impact the ability of people to pay on their other credit, particularly cards and auto loans. You're noticing
I
that.
think so. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that I had started speculating, back in
Right.
September or so when, okay,
Right.
we were just waiting for, okay, we knew these moratoriums were ending. We knew that delinquent borrowers were going to start being reported to the credit rating agencies, and we're expecting the spike. And it took a little bit to show up in the data, but we were kind of wondering, well, like surely if there's a significant spike in student loan delinquencies, it's got to spill over to other credit instruments. I mean, if you're financially strapped in one regard, you're probably financially strapped in another. And so yeah, that it does feel, at least again, this is somewhat speculative, but it does feel like it's starting to
Yeah.
spill over.
Yeah. And this is all in the context of a pretty low and stable unemployment rate, right? We have a
Hmm.
4.2% unemployment rate. No layoffs yet. No pickup in layoffs yet. There's still, at least if you believe in the unemployment insurance claims data. So what does that mean if unemployment, what does this all mean if unemployment starts to rise? I mean, I guess that's the question, or
Right.
key question. Okay. Okay. Anything else on that? Was good statistic, Marissa. Very good one.
Thanks.
Anything else folks want to say about this before we move on? No, hearing none.
I'll just say one more thing, which is that I read a really interesting analysis about some of this data, and it was breaking out the people in this bucket that have mortgages, and there is a disproportionate share that have an FHA loan.
Ah, okay.
So, and I know that's something you've been watching, right? That
Yeah.
delinquency rate on FHA mortgages, those tend to be more first-time home buyers, people low middle income. You don't need as much of a down payment for those loans. You can have a higher loan to value ratio. So there, we might see more stress, particularly
there
there
as
where we
well.
were already watching that
Yeah.
becoming stressed, right?
Exactly. Justin mentioned the first mortgage delinquency rate going up. That's all FHA. I mean, it's not Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans.
Yeah.
It's not bank loans. It's all FHA. Okay, very good. Adam, you want to go next?
Sure.
I
If
mean,
you
I
want.
was going to
So
go to Justin, but because I don't want to take his other statistic,
I
then
know
what
he needs
happens here? So
he needs to regroup. Yeah.
he'll need to regroup.
Put me
But
on the
I thought
spot.
to get you into the conversation, we'll go with you and take our chances.
Okay. Uh, let's see how precise I want to be here. Okay, so this is a January to April 2024 versus 2025. Okay, so
Okay.
year over year number.
Say that again. It's from
Jan-
So
it's,
January to April.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Year
Yeah, January to April.
date
First
through
4 months of
April.
the year to
Yeah.
date through April.
Okay.
Right. I'll be really precise. It's all stats.
Okay.
19,017,843 in 2024, down to 18,544,446. So a decline of 2.49% from 2024 to 2025 through April.
It's a population number.
It is a number of people, but it's not a population number.
Jobs?
Not jobs.
It's people, but it's
Migration,
not population.
immigration.
It's you're in the ballpark. It is people moving from one place to another, but not permanently, if that makes sense.
Not permanently.
Temporary moves.
No, it's not. I think that was. I mean, sort of, if you think about it. I guess.
Does it go to the migration flows though, or is this
It does
related?
not go to migration flows, but it goes to people
Moving.
people traveling from one place to another, I guess. Travelers.
Travel.
Is it travel? I mean, is it
A
miles
little-
driven or something? No.
No, it's a number of people. It's a certain type of people traveling to a certain type of place.
Is it foreign visitors?
Yes. Foreign
Number two.
visitors to the U.S. Yeah, Justin. you're
Justin's on
fire.
fire.
Yeah.
If you'd say this was also your
Remind me not
backup
to
stat,
invite him
I'd
back.
go-
Sorry about
Yeah,
that. Go ahead, Adam. That's a good one. What is that? So that's the number
So,
four.
okay, so
traveler?
that is from the so-called I believe it's the I-92 program. It's compiled by the International Trade Administration. So they take foreign arrivals and departures actually from non-citizens, from U.S. citizens, and compile that on a monthly basis. So that number, as you might expect, it took a nosedive in the pandemic, and every year there's been double-digit growth since then, right? And if there was another year of double-digit growth this year, we would have finally gotten back to 2019 levels of international travel.
Mm.
But clearly, right, that is not happening. And the number is down a little bit. It's driven largely, I was looking at, you can go country by country on this. Actually, you can go US airport by US airport if you really,
Oh, cool.
you really want to go deep. But it's being driven largely by, as you might expect, the Americas and Europe, right? A fairly sizable reduction in travelers, particularly from Canada, right? I think that's
I
been
don't know.
somewhat well documented. You've seen that a little bit from Europe. Interestingly, Asia is up on a year-over-year basis. China's a little bit down, but if there's a pretty sizable increase in travelers from Japan. So there is a lot of variation from country to country. But all in all, I think this is, a somewhat worrying sign when it comes to tourism and consumer industries, because international travelers tend to stay longer, spend more, and this could be impactful.
So this goes to the kind of the tariff trade war in the, particularly with the Canadians and the Europeans. They're upset, and there's been some boycotts about travel to the U.S., and that's what you're observing.
That's exactly, and I think specifically with Canada, right? There's been a lot of talk about that sort of thing, about boycotting the U.S. And I mean, to be clear, we're talking about even for Canada, 3-4% reduction. So most people are not meaningfully changing their plans, it seems, so far. But with European travelers, especially, and some Canadian travelers, maybe these plans were made far out enough in advance that, yeah, I think you are starting to see some evidence that these boycotts or other reasons for concern that they might have that might lead them not to travel to the U.S., that is starting to show up a little bit in the data, and it's kind of killed some of the momentum that we'd had these last few years.
So how nerdy are you? I mean, did you look at the airport data, or this is a real test?
I'm nerdy enough that I will. I was cramming for this, so I haven't done it yet, but I'm nerdy enough to be excited to dig into that.
Yeah, I'm like very interested in that.
Yeah, I wonder where Canadians tend to go the most. Like, does everybody tend to go to the same places, or
Florida?
do different
So
travelers go to different
I can
places?
say that, yeah, they might be hanging out with Justin this weekend.
I saw some
get
Ontario
pictures of
license
sharks.
plates.
Yeah. So interestingly, right, it looks like, based on some data on border crossings, which I didn't dig into, I actually just read this, so I'm not totally sure what the numbers are here, but right, border crossings, northern border crossings, right, into places like Niagara Falls, or from Vancouver into Seattle, I believe those are down more than flights, right? Those, because that might be like cross-border shopping type of trip. It's probably more elective travel that maybe you can decide sort of spur of the moment. I've seen anecdotally that places like New York, Myrtle Beach, and some of those destinations that are very popular with Canadians, big parts of Florida too. I think those are being hit a little bit less hard, at least initially. But those are the kinds of places that I think we should be keeping an eye on.
How big a deal do you think it is from a macroeconomic perspective? I mean, it doesn't sound. I mean, you went from 19 plus million in the 4 months down to 18, a little under 19 million. You said down 2.4%.
Yeah.
In this year to date this year through April compared to last year. Do you think, how big a deal is that? Do you think?
I mean, I think if it stays at 2.5%, I don't think it's a huge deal from a national perspective. I think, because I'm a regional economics nerd. Yeah, I think regionally there are some very significant impacts associated with diminished international travel. And I guess the concern I would have is that this may just be the beginning of these numbers starting to dip. And so I don't think we kind of park at 2.5%. I'm guessing it's going to be more than that as the year goes on. And then I think you start to see some potential, at least sector level impacts within, leisure hospitality, maybe the hotel industry that, has had its share of struggles over the last 5 years. Maybe some of those come roaring back.
Do you think, is there any evidence that Americans aren't traveling abroad less? Do you think Americans are staying here, which could offset some of that?
It's interesting, that data actually, they also track. So they basically, any flight, I believe it used to be you had to fill out a paper form when you flew overseas. I don't think you have to do that anymore. I think they actually take it from like the passenger manifest or whatever it may be.
I
And
remember those days. They weren't too
Yeah.
long ago. I mean, I'm
yeah,
so
no,
happy I don't have to fill those things out anymore. They got to go
Just a
find
few
a
years
pen or a
ago, I would feel
pencil.
like I was
Yeah,
filling
no,
them out.
pre-pandemic for sure.
Yeah.
yeah, right. The last few times I've flown overseas, I didn't fill it out. Thought maybe I was doing something wrong, but no, apparently that's just how it is now. But they also track Americans going overseas, and actually those numbers are pretty healthy. Like those numbers seem to be growing still. So it does look like more Americans are going abroad than they were a year ago, whereas fewer people are coming here. So that actually, the idea that there might be, and there might be some offset with if there's overall reduced international travel from domestic travelers, but we're not really seeing any offset yet, I don't think.
By the way, that's adding to the trade deficit in services, right? Because foreign travel here is a U.S. export. American travelers over there to overseas is a import.
Correct.
So everything you just said suggests this is adding to the nation's trade deficit.
Yes.
Right.
And in services where we run a surplus. Yeah.
Right.
I spoke at
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was going to say I spoke at an airlines conference this week, and they were talking about this real bifurcation in the market that the higher end traveler, the boomer, right, just fine, continues to travel, will make those overseas trips, buy premium type of tickets and legroom and whatnot, but the real softness is in the lower end of the market, as you could imagine. So
interesting.
Even domestically, for domestic travel, right, they're seeing more promotions going on. So it seems like a bigger deal, and just that bifurcation might lead you to some different conclusions. So.
Well, I guess this is all in the context of a weaker U.S. dollar too, because that would
That's
make the U.S. look more attractive to foreign traveler, and despite that, it's not happening. So that's pretty strong tell. Yeah, interesting. That's a great statistic, Adam. Did you have one in your back pocket too, just in case?
I do. I've got a couple backups ready to go.
Ooh.
I figured nobody was taking that one, but I've got more if we need more content.
Maybe there's a second round.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, although we're already deep into the podcast here. Well, this could be an all day affair, if we wanted to. Okay, Justin, you're up. Let's go back to you.
All right. My statistic is 1.02.
Consumer credit related?
No.
Is that the insured unemployment rate?
Oh, no, it is not. At least that's not what I have in mind.
Actually, it is the insured unemployment rate is, I think, 1%.
That's why I was hesitant
Yeah.
for a second, but that's not what I have in mind.
But he said 1.02, so
that's very precise.
That's very different than 1%.
Is it some kind of unemployment rate?
It's tangential to the unemployment rate and is indeed labor market related.
It's tangential to the unemployment rate? Is it? Okay.
Yes.
So it's 1% of.
I
didn't say it was a percent.
It's
a ratio.
Okay. Is it millions?
It's a ratio.
It's a ratio. Is it job openings versus vacant?
It is. It is. Yes, it's the vacancy to unemployment.
I get credit for that. Now, come on. Chris tried, but no. Okay. Yeah. Chris is too polite. I'll give it to Chris.
I give it to Marissa. Right. She was on it.
What are you talking about? Give it to Marissa.
I said it at the same time you did.
Okay, all right.
I heard it all like at the same time, the three of you saying.
You can tell that Mr. and I are very competitive in this.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. So this is the vacancy to unemployment ratio. The reason I bring this up is because it feels like it's not quite as relevant as it used to be. But like for the last couple of years, this is like all the people we're paying attention to in the labor market because job openings, they peaked at around 12 million in I think it was like mid 2023. Of course, unemployment has stayed relatively stable throughout that time. But of course, when I think it was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when inflation was peaking, everybody was hyper focused on the tightness in the labor market that was putting upward pressure on wages and kind of spurring concerns of a wage price spiral. And then I think it was Bernanke and Blanchard published a paper kind of really zeroing in on the vacancy to unemployment ratio as a key driver of wage growth and inflation. But now, because we've had a surge of labor force in the last couple of years because of immigration and at the same time, a general slowing in the labor market where not necessarily to a concerning level, but just things returning back to normal. We get this situation where everything kind of feels like it's back in equilibrium, and this is all coming in a time when the Fed is still trying to get inflation down to its 2% rate, and I think at the very least it's done enough to cool the labor market so that the labor market is basically not really putting any upward pressure on inflation anymore.
I never liked that measure of labor market slack. No, but you are absolutely right. That was what people were focused on, and particularly the folks saying we're going into recession, right? Because they said, we saw this huge surge in job openings or vacancy relative to unemployment. The labor market's excruciatingly tight. It's overheating. Therefore, the Fed's going to have to jack up interest rates, and we're going into recession. And that was the measure of labor market slack that people kind of were focused on. So I absolutely agree, but I never liked that. Because for me, I always thought things like why are we going away from the employment to population ratio, the EPOP? That was historically always been a very good measure in terms of what it means for wage growth and inflation. And what it said was, well, we have a full employment economy. We're there. The EPOP for the prime age worker is, I don't know, I'm making this up, 80%, 81%. But that's exactly consistent with full employment, no more, no less. So yeah, the labor market's tight, but it's not overheating to the degree that the folks that look at that vacancy to unemployment ratio would have thought. I was always confused. Why did you guys decide down that one? We've always used EPOP, and EPOP always, has been a very good, but and I think history bears that out, right? I mean, we kind of navigated through and didn't have a recession despite all that. But that's a good statistic. That's a really good one. Anything else, guys, on that one? Chris, anything you want to add to that? Where are you on that debate about the vacancy to unemployment rate ratio as a measure of labor market slack? Do you have a view?
I think it's a useful measure. I don't dispute it. I don't think it's the only measure, but it's helpful from the wage perspective, right?
Yeah, but
That gave you some
here's the
insight.
other thing. I always had questions about the unfilled positions.
Right.
How reliable are they in the
True.
kind of post-pandemic world when everything's online? Does it mean the same thing as it did 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago? It always bothered me. But here, I'm going to throw out one related statistic. Someone asked me, they're looking for kind of esoteric in the weeds statistics that you look at to kind of gauge, if the economy's, in this case, now coming under stress. If you look at the job opening rate in manufacturing, which is job vacancies divided by, the folks in the manufacturing base, that actually is a very good leading indicator of recession. When that starts turning down, when it starts declining, you see fewer job openings in the manufacturing sector, that's kind of a 6, 9, 12-month lead to recession. Now, I don't want to overstate the case because we don't have this data back that far, but, in the data that we have, it does a very good job. And it's intuitive because manufacturing is, interest rate sensitive. Usually it's interest rates rising that, is ultimately the cause of the economic downturn. And it's been, and also it's even taken on more importance in the current context because manufacturing is kind of on the front lines of the trade war, right? That's what's getting affected here. And it is turning negative. So, an indication that things are weakening. So I don't completely dismiss that measure, but I take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. Anything, Marissa, anything on that?
No.
No? Okay. All right. That's a good one. All right, Chris, you're up.
Okay. I have a very obscure statistic,
Oh,
but it
boy.
makes a point.
24%. That means we're never
24%.
going to get it. Is that what that means?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I'll let you flounder for a
You'll
while.
let us, yes, right.
Embarrass ourselves.
Yeah, okay.
24%.
24. Is it housing related?
It is kind of. Not exactly, but kind of.
Kind of. Is it mortgage related?
No.
Okay.
Construction related?
No.
24% of.
It's not really. Let me clarify. It's not housing specifically related. I'm going to relate it to housing, but.
Oh, I see.
Is it demographic?
Yes.
Oh, is this back to generational households?
Of course, that's all I ever talk about. So yes.
Yes. So is that the percent of households that have more than one generation living in the household? Something like
No,
that?
no, it's a little lower than that, but
Okay.
that's not it. It is households. It's a fraction of households.
But it's not generational related. It is.
Mm,
No,
No. Oh,
no.
okay.
Is it like
It's a
maybe
fraction of households over the age of 75.
Oh,
Say that again.
That-
wait, that's it? That's it?
No, no, it's a fraction of households over the age of 75. So 24% of households over the age of 75 can
Oh my gosh.
afford
Jeez Louise.
can afford
The
Say that again?
median price single family home.
a daily visit from a home health aide. Right? So
Oh, 20. I would have said it would be higher than that.
What?
It's only
you would
20.
I would have said that too, but it's a very
Yeah.
low fraction.
Right.
Oh,
And that
Huh.
has all sorts of implications for the housing market. That's why I bring it up, right? So you have
Right.
this very large population, right, of older Americans. It's about to get bigger, right? Because the first baby boomers are first baby boomers to turn 80 are coming up here, right? So you're going to have this pretty sizable population here, many of whom can't afford home health aid, even though they've said they wanted to age in place all their life, right? They're not selling their homes. There's an economic reality that's going to come up here. And for that reason, I think there's going to be more multi-generational housing, right? Their children are going to have to take care of their parents. Household formations are going to come in
Interesting.
as a
How
result.
where's that data from?
There was a paper. It was in a newsletter from the Harvard
Joint Center.
Joint Center of Housing Studies. Yeah.
Huh.
Does this
So
account
20
for?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, so it's not, does this account for? This is after Medicare reimbursement, or this would be kind of just paying out of pocket?
Yep. This is all in of all the. So some people do have some insurance they can tap into. So the study tried to quantify for all the sources of income and just said, well, this is the fraction that could actually afford a daily home health worker, right? Then they broke it out by income, which was interesting. And of course, there you can see the real variation, right? If you're 200% above area income, no problem, right? You're going to have sufficient resources. But below that, right, the numbers drop off substantially, right? Especially
Does
that
Medicare
lower
pay for that or Medicaid, Medicare? I know Medicaid pays for.
for lower. The Medicare does not pay for it.
Medicare does not.
Medicaid will pay for some, right?
Right, because that pays for low income Americans, but also for elder, I guess for home health care. It'll help pay for that. It will.
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
So
interesting.
it's that middle group, right? That's
Yeah, that's
falls
kinda
through the
stuck.
cracks.
Do you know what
Okay.
that cost is?
For I don't know. I know what a senior living facility costs because I'm associated with one, but I don't know what the home health worker, right? It's about $4,000 or $5,000 a month for a senior living facility.
But your broader point is we've got an increasing number of folks that are in their 70s and 80s and older. They are not going to be able to afford this kind of care that they're going to need on a daily basis. Therefore, they're going to start living with their kids and maybe their grandkids and could be their great grandkids. And that's where there's going to be some kind of grand bargain here. The kids
Yes.
get to live in the home maybe for free, and the deal is they help take care of their elderly relative or parent.
Yes, it's that sandwich generation,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Got to help. You want to help your parents, but you can't
Right.
afford perhaps to send them or to send a worker in. So you're going to have to provide that care for that
So
parent.
this may be one way to address the kind of the housing shortage. I mean, it plays out over a long period of time. It's not a solution for the here and now, but over time, we're just going to see fewer households because we just have more intergenerational households.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
interesting.
That's right. At least over this next like 5-10 year period. Then
Yeah.
after that, the demographics actually start to work in the other direction.
Oh, because these
right?
are all the boomers who are now in their 60s, and the teeth of the boomers are now in their 70s. That's what you're saying.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Oh, interesting. That's
So
a great
after that, if we get as we get into like the mid 2030s, then we actually potentially start to see surpluses of housing, right? Depending on how the demographics work. If immigration stays at the levels that it's at, right, we're going to end up with even fewer households being formed, and you could
Right.
see some surpluses developing in certain communities.
How far out is that, Chris? Is that's not now. That's not
That's
next
not
year.
now.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's
10
like
years from now?
what's that?
10 years from now?
I think you start to see that in
Yeah.
10 years from now in certain areas. And then again, a lot depends on immigration policy and if
Yeah.
birth rates were to suddenly shift. But given
Yeah.
current trends, as we get closer to 2035, 2040, that's when I do expect you'll see, household formations really flattening out and construction probably is going to follow. And I think that's also one reason why you don't see home builders rushing in to build, because they can kind of see this coming as well. It takes a while to put in a new development, even if you get the zoning permit. So I think they are very cautious in their building for that reason.
Oh, that's interesting. So, we're in this very severe shortage situation, and that's developed since the financial crisis and the collapse of building, coming out of that period. And then, of course, a lot of other now it's just expensive to build, zoning and tariffs and immigration policy
Immigration,
and
yeah.
labor costs, all those kinds of things. And, the policymakers have been thinking about, how do I address this? And you're saying, well, even if they don't address it, this may solve itself in a sense 10 years from now, 15 years from now. But, if they do nothing and the level of construction remains where it is, the shortage will start to abate and may even go away, because we're just going to see fewer households form.
That's right. At least nationally. Then there's that
nationally,
question of,
right? Yeah,
right?
nationally.
Are the houses that
Yeah, good point.
that people inherit in the places that we need them, right? Or are they the right type of house, right? If you're working in Baltimore and you inherit a property in Florida, right? That the mismatch might not be there. It might be there. So you still need home building. I'm not advocating that it goes to zero, but
Yeah,
the trends are going to work in that direction.
very interesting. And that also is that what's that statistic? How many young or how many people are that are like in their 30s and 40s living with their parents? I mean, that also has increased quite dramatically since the pandemic, for sure. Those folks, those younger folks, aren't leaving and starting their own household. They're staying with their parents.
That's right. That's right. It spiked during the pandemic, but then it's come back down a bit, but still very high relative to where we were 15, 20 years ago.
So another dynamic that's consistent with what you're saying, intergenerational households. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
All right. Good. That's a good one. Okay, I got one for you. $3.12. Yeah, you should get
gas.
Price.
Ah, that was too easy.
Yeah,
Way to go, Adam.
That was my backup. I call foul. I looked at the AAA gas price, $3.19 this morning.
Oh, what am I looking at? I'm looking at
You went unleaded?
I'm looking at the EIA number, the Energy Information Administrator.
I like AAA, but
I like AAA too. Okay. What's AAA? $3.19?
$3.19.
All right. Okay. Since that was so easy, let me ask this question and see how good you are, Adam.
I shouldn't have answered.
$3.53.
That was a year ago.
My God.
Good guess, but no. No, good guess, but no.
Oh, from the AAA, it was a year ago.
Oh, geez.
Is that like the higher grade stuff?
Huh? You mean
is that like the higher grade?
Higher octane?
Gas, the higher octane.
It could be,
Like
but
the
that's not what I had
premium?
in mind.
Is it diesel?
Diesel. Way to go, Justin. Diesel prices. Yeah, diesel prices. This is a good news story, right? In the sense that prices are down. Although we've been here really for the past at least 6 months, almost 9 months. We've been at this level. And it's consistent with the low oil prices. Oil is hanging somewhere between $60 and $65 a barrel. and that's low. That's just about consistent with the break even cost of producing and transporting the last barrel of oil to the marketplace from the Permian Basin. We just got that data from the Dallas Fed. So if you go much lower than that, then it starts to producers start losing money and they start cutting back on production. So we're right on the edge of that. But 60, 65 bucks a barrel, $3, that feels pretty good, particularly on Memorial Day is when people start, traveling. The one thing I will point out though, and this helps cushion some of the blow, the financial blow to low income households from the tariffs and the resulting price increases that are coming. So that's a good thing. It may take a little bit of pressure off. But the one thing that makes me a little nervous is usually when oil prices are down, gas prices are down, you see inflation expectations come down with them, right? Because people use gas prices as kind of a litmus test for their thinking about inflation and their broader financial situation. That has not happened, obviously. Inflation expectations remain, very elevated, whether that be consumer inflation expectations as measured by, let's say, the University of Michigan survey or the New York Fed survey, and even bond market expectations. We haven't seen any benefit from the lower oil prices, so that makes me a little nervous about everything. But nonetheless, I'll take it, and it does feel like it's going to stay low, may even go a little bit lower. This goes to a weakening economy, less demand globally because of the trade war and the effects of that. And it looks like OPEC plus, which is the Saudis and the Russians are going to start producing more oil here, and they've got Saudis in particular have a lot of excess capacity to produce, and that should keep prices down and should help out going forward. So I view that as a kind of a positive story. How are you? Do you buy 87 grade, Adam, or do you buy any more than I know? Chris, since he's a crypto king, he's buying that premium gas for that little Italian thing he drives around. Is that is that his Maserati? That he drives around.
His little Vespa.
His little Vespa.
Right. I don't live
Why
the
does
high
he
life
drive,
like
why does
you.
he drive the
Maserati.
Vespa with all his crypto earnings? You would have thought he would be, in that Mazda.
It's a very special Vespa.
It's a special Vespa. I love that Vespa.
Adam has news on
He
the
does?
car.
Oh, my car related news that
Yeah.
I joined. Yeah, I joined Marissa in the EV club.
Oh.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Can I ask what kind of car you bought? Or is that too
Private. No,
much?
no. The Nissan Aria.
Ah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm like Marissa. I'm a convert. Once you start driving one of these things, it's fun.
Now, do you get a tax credit? Is there still tax credits available or no?
No,
they're
I was
gone?
too late.
Too late
Yeah.
for that. Okay. All right. Okay.
No
Very good.
range anxiety, yeah. Adam, you're good.
I don't go much of anywhere. And when we do, we've got our other car. Yeah, I would have range anxiety if we went anywhere far, but but so far so good.
What's
So,
the range? Is it about 500 miles, 400, something like that?
it's a little under 300.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
Yeah, so you can't go too far unless you've got the whole kind of charging game plan mapped out, which Marissa, I think you've done that sort
He's
of
quite
thing,
good at
right?
that.
Where you're
Yeah. I've taken fairly long road trips. Just figure
Hey.
out where I'm going to charge.
Well, I thought that's a pretty good game. But I thought we would kind of end the conversation in one of two ways or both, seeing how it goes. One, I want to come back to probability recession. I think that's on everyone's mind, given events, and find out what your probability is of a recession starting at some point in the coming year. What is it today, and how's that changed, and why? And then maybe if we have time, we'll talk about, let's get a feel good statistic. Everyone come with, because, it's been pretty dark here, for a while. Trade war, all the things going on in Washington, so forth and so on. And again, it's Memorial Day, and it feels like we should, we should end on we should have a happy ending here. So maybe we'll do that as well. But let's go around around the group and get your probabilities of recession. And Chris, I always begin with you on this one. What's your probability of recession now, and where were you?
I think I was at 45%. I'm going to hold at 45.
I think you were at 40.
Was that 40?
Yeah,
I think it was
so.
40. I
See
thought
how
you
he
were.
does that? He kind of sneaks that in.
I thought you were at 40, and I know I'm always
No,
higher
I was
than
at 45. I see what he's doing.
I'm at 45.
Yeah.
I was at 45. I was with Marissa.
I think me and Mark were at 45 and you were lower.
Chris, I think you
No?
were lower. We're gonna have to run the tape here.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Run
But
it
anyway,
back.
Well, I'm at
okay, but it
45
doesn't
now.
matter. You're at 45.
I'm at 45.
And did anything change?
Didn't change.
No, even like today's events, the president was talking about tariffs on the European Union of 50% and tariffs on Apple iPhones. That didn't change your thinking about anything.
Not really. I still put it in the category of, part of that broader negotiation, if you will.
Got it. Okay, 45%. Okay. Marissa? 45%.
45%. And it
that's
hasn't
where you
changed.
were.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Nothing's changed.
No.
Okay. All right. Adam?
I'm at 55%.
Ooh,
Higher.
really?
I probably was. I was higher. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think there's enough uncertainty and enough of the tariff impacts that have still yet to kind of make their way through. So, for example, right, I'm watching the tonnage at the port of LA Long Beach, right, and all of these empty ships that are starting to come in. That there's enough that hasn't worked its way through yet that I'm maybe a little bit more nervous than all of you.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What about you, Justin? What's your problem?
I'm still at 40%. I haven't, I mean, that was a little bit higher before last week's China deal or agreement, or whatever you want to call it. It seems to be that the administration is shifting, at least in a more positive direction from where we were at. I think, maybe we do get some more trade deals that we still end up higher than, in terms of the effective tariff rate than before January, but, something at least a little bit more palatable. But yeah, I think 40% is, is where I'm comfortable planting my feet at right now.
Okay. Very good. I'm at 45. That's where I was. And no, Chris, I was not at 40. I was at 45. But, I did take some solace in some work we've been doing, trying to construct a leading economic indicator of recessions, probability of recession in the coming 12 months based on a machine learning algorithm. Chris, you want to describe that? Because I know you've been doing a lot of work here. You wanted to just talk about that a little bit and what it's saying?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So we've been working on improving our quantitative probability of recession models, right? We have for a long time, we've had a probit model of recession probability just based on a few key factors. And now we're exploring the use of AI.
And for the listener, don't get wrapped up in probit model.
Okay.
That's just, that's Chris jargon,
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
Just a regression model.
Just a regression. Oh, okay. That makes it easier for the listener.
A way to estimate.
Okay. Sorry.
Probability.
I'm just having fun. Go ahead.
We're using artificial intelligence and machine learning, some of the newest tools that we have available to develop a more sophisticated model that can look at all sorts of different economic indicators, right? So all these indicators that we talk about each week, along with really hundreds of other indicators that we have available for the economy, to try to see if there are any early warning signals, if you will, that could give us a sense of what recession probably looks like over the next 12 months. So it's been a really interesting exercise, right? Can kind of feed a bunch of data into the machine here and let it loose. And we found some really good models, first of all, that seem highly predictive. We backtest them and look how they would have predicted in the past based on the information that was known at the time. And they perform well, and they kind of also meet some of our smell test, if you will, in terms of, for example, the models, the leading contender now actually did put higher probability of recession prior to COVID. Not that it caught COVID or knew that COVID was coming.
Well, it was over 50% prior to COVID. It was saying recession. It said recession's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no information about a virus, though, of course.
No, of course. No.
But,
which is interesting, right?
Which is interesting, right? It did catch the fact that the yield curve was inverted and that there were other weaknesses in the economy at that time.
Well, my interpretation of what it's saying is we were going to have a recession regardless of whether we're going to have a pandemic. And if you go back to that period in 2019, that was a trade war. and you could see the damage
Yeah.
accumulating on the manufacturing base and agriculture. They were in recession. And there was, you remember I was giving speeches and I said the next recession is going to be June 20th, 2020. Obviously I was being flip, but I was making a point that the economy was going to be pretty weak in that period. And this model says there would have been a recession, with or without a pandemic.
Yeah, the odds of recession were high, were very high.
Well, and that model that we've constructed, since it's gotten every recession since 1960 dead on, and it had only one false positive, meaning it predicted recession, and a recession did not occur, and that was in the late 60s, and that was for like 1 month. So, it feels like it was kind of screaming pretty loudly, we're going to have a recession.
It was. And conversely, in 2022, when a lot of economists were forecasting a recession, and there were some signals, this model suggested that.
Can I say some economists were predicting recession? Some economists?
Some.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
A lot.
No one
unnamed, those unnamed economists, let's say. Okay, go ahead.
The model was sending a somewhat higher signal, but it wasn't crossing the threshold, right? It was still very low. It was
not even close.
It was not indicating recession at that time.
Right. It was like 30%, maybe 35%.
25, 30, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. You know what I found so fascinating? All this is fascinating, but the thing, we take tens of thousands of series and test them. So this is trained on a lot of data. What I found fascinating was it ended up with kind of the things we look at all the time anyway. You can kind of rank order what's contributing to the result, the probability of recession. And, the yield curve is up there, the Conference Board's leading economic indicator, which includes a plethora of other leading indicators, everything from consumer confidence to building permits. Building permits were in there. The other interesting thing was employment changes that, if you see slowing employment growth, particularly manufacturing, going back to manufacturing, leading up to the period, then that's a sign that, you're going to have recession. And the thing is, it's not, there were some UI claims were in there, but they were kind of lower on the list. Building permits were on there. They were kind of lower on the list. I noticed rig counts, that goes back to oil demand, and they were down. But the thing that struck me was not the variables or the data that the model ultimately settled on. It was the transformations. It was, the lags, the kind of the transformation, the percent changes a year ago or month to month, or the non-linearities or the interaction terms. So it's not about the variables. It's about how you piece those variables together that is highly predictive, which there's like zero probability that any human would be able to do that, to get that right. Now, I do worry about so-called overfitting, meaning that we're just, because we don't have a lot of data points. There's 9 recessions, going back to 1990. So it feels like you got to be very careful about that. But these models understand that risk and control for it, with different types of statistical techniques to try to address that. But that's the one thing I do worry about, that might be overfitted and makes it less useful going forward. But nonetheless, and by the way, the model's prediction of recession in May is 45%.
45%.
45%. And I think that's why Chris went from 40 to 45, to tell you the truth, the modeling.
Probably.
No.
Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
We've been around this 45% all week. So.
Yeah, all week. Yeah. But I thought that was pretty cool. I think that's a pretty, and we're obviously going to put this on the economic view and, start using this on a more consistent basis. I thought it was very, very useful. Okay. We're getting a little long in the tooth here. Why don't we end on a happy note? I think we can all do this. Can you identify one happy statistic, that kind of says, oh, things are going to be okay here? Can we do that? Is that fair? Okay. Everyone's shaking their head. Yeah. Marissa, you want to go first?
Sure. The number is 1.
I didn't want to play a game. I just wanted the number.
Oh.
He just likes the number
I
one.
see.
That's
I
all.
like the
He's
number
happy.
one. Yes.
Is it the insured unemployment rate?
Is it the insured unemployment
No,
rate?
it's the number of times I've won at pickleball now. It went from 0 to
Oh.
1 in the past week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a
Who'd you
big-
beat? Your mom or you know?
Thank you. No, not my
Sorry, I couldn't
76-year-old
resist. I
mother.
couldn't resist.
No, my friend that I play pickleball with her every Wednesday. Just her
Ah.
and I were just playing singles to learn, and she
Yeah.
has beat me like
Oh, congratulations.
every single game, and I finally won a game.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm
So
sure
I
that's the start of a
feel
trend.
really good
You're really
about
good. Okay.
the
I'll
way
take
things
it.
are going.
I'll take it. Adam?
I was gonna say, brother, if Marissa wants to take on a 70-something, my dad is formidable at pickleball.
I
He's
bet.
winning all these like senior cups or whatever. That's all. I think it's all he
Ooh.
does. So
Really?
yeah, I have to arrange a cross-country match.
I see the boomers on the court. They are
Awesome.
fierce.
Yeah,
Fierce.
they're
I'm
intense.
scared of them. Yeah.
It's yeah. Anyway,
Is
my
it formidable or formidable? You said
I've heard
formidable.
both. I usually say formidable, but
I say
is
formidable.
formidable the
I don't know.
preferred?
Well, how do you say it, Justin?
Formidable. It might be the
Okay,
Long
I'm going with
Island
Justin.
accent, and
Is that what that is? Is that this Nassau County? Are you from Nassau?
Every so often, it comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So
Yeah,
what's your feel good stat?
all right. I was gonna say it's 7%, and it's the open table seated diner reservations, which is something we used to look at a ton during the pandemic, right? It's a year over
Uh-huh.
year change in people who make reservations to eat out versus a year ago. And that number has been positive throughout this is the average over the last 90 days of that number. So in other words, people are eating out more according to that than they were a year ago. So it suggests to me that there's at least some evidence that consumers are not, you know, running for the hills or not heading to the bunker, whatever analogy you want to use. They're still going out and spending their money. So that's
Yeah.
gives me
So
some
though,
reassurance.
is there an underlying trend growth rate? I mean, because I know I'm just using it more because I'm not going out more. I'm just using it more because that's the way you make reservations.
That's true. And certainly if we're comparing that to like 10 years ago, I think that would be the
Okay.
case. I don't know. Unfortunately, they used to publish the entire time series, and now you actually you can only get 90 days from their website. So I'm not exactly sure what the long-term trend is. I remember from back when we were looking at during COVID, I think sort of normal is probably around there, but I mean it clearly was down or flat for quite a while.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. Justin, I didn't get your feel good stat, did I? No.
not yet. No.
Okay. What's your feel good
Mine's
stat?
133.5. It's the Conference Board Consumer Confidence Present Situations Index. Now, I should say this. I should qualify this by saying the Conference Board Index is decidedly not positive. It's fallen about 25 or so points since November, largely because consumers are very anxious about tariffs. That said, pretty much the entire decline has been because of the expectations index. Just a fear of what is to come. But the present situations index is indicating that altogether consumers are feeling okay about the present situation. They're still spending their money. They still have their jobs. The unemployment rate remains low and jobless claims remain relatively subdued. So I think it's very least an indicator that like right now people are okay. And that it might change, and that there's certainly the fear of that is getting shown in the statistic. But just right now, it seems like it's okay.
Yeah, that's I like the Conference Board Survey of Consumer Confidence. It's my all-time favorite kind of leading indicator. If I had to pick one thing to look at to gauge recession, it would be that. But I've never looked at that component. I wonder if I did, whether I'd get a different story or a different perspective on things. I'm gonna take a look at that. That's very interesting. Chris, what's your feel good stat?
Price of eggs.
Are
They're
they
down.
down?
They're down over the week or the month. So
Yeah.
that's good.
That is
Like
good.
like the price of gas, it's one of the things consumers do key off of, right? So
Right.
They're down
Right.
how much?
over the let's see, over the week, I'm looking at wholesale prices. It's down 15% this week, down 7% over the last month. Some volatility in there.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Well,
I won't tell you that what they are over the year though, because
they're
we're
still
keeping
up a lot over the year, I
we're
guess.
keeping
Yeah.
this a happy.
Yeah. Yeah. This is feel good.
Yeah.
Well, my feel good is 4.2% unemployment rate. I mean, you know, despite everything, unemployment's pushing up. You know, it's higher than it was. I mean, we were at 3.5 back a year ago. I'm making that up. I think it was close to 3.5. We're now 4.2, but that was by design. Not, that's a feature, not a bug. I think because we wanted to cool things off a little bit. Now we'll have to watch it because it does feel like the unemployment rate is creeping higher, and you know, when Dante comes on and goes to the first and second, third significant digit, then we start to see, we pay, it's creeping higher, so we got to watch. But so far so good. If we continue to hang kind of around the 4% range, that's fine. We'll navigate through. We'll be okay. Okay, that all feels good, right? Everyone feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Anything else you want to add before we call it a podcast? Adam, Justin, it was great to have you guys on. I appreciate that.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
Thanks. Yeah.
And always good to have my two trusty co-hosts. Yeah. And,
Everyone enjoy a nice
and
holiday long weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy
Well,
Memorial
I
Day.
guess if it's raining all weekend, you guys probably won't.
I think we're going to
Be
get some
enjoying it.
sunshine here in Pennsylvania this weekend.
Okay.
A little chilly, but well, I hope everyone gets to get a hamburger or ribs or chicken or whatever it is they get. Okay, with that, we're going to call this a podcast, dear listener. I hope you found it of some value and interest, and we will talk to you next week. Take care now.